September 2008. Lehman Brothers, a huge investment bank, collapsed. For most people, that sounded like Wall Street drama. But behind it was a much scarier problem. The world was not sure which banks were safe. If banks stop trusting each other, money stops moving. Companies cannot borrow. Salaries get delayed. Shops cannot pay suppliers. So governments stepped in with emergency support to keep the system alive. Before we talk about Basel, forget the jargon. Imagine Maria wants to open a pizza shop. She needs money for ovens, tables, and the first few months of rent. Other people have money they are not using today. They deposit it in the bank. The bank promises to keep it safe and pay a little interest. Then the bank lends some of that money to Maria. If her shop succeeds, she pays the loan back with interest. The bank pays savers a little, charges borrowers a little more, and keeps the difference. That is banking in one sentence, moving money from people who have it today to people who can use it productively. But there is a catch. Maria might fail. And when borrowers fail, bank assets can lose value. Now we need three words that sound technical, but are actually simple: assets, liabilities, and equity. Let's use a house, because everyone understands a house better than a bank balance sheet. You buy a house worth $200,000. You use $20,000 of your own savings, and borrow the remaining $180,000 as a mortgage. The house is your asset, something you own. The mortgage is your liability, money you owe. And your $20,000 is equity, the part that really belongs to you after debt is paid. A bank works the same way, just bigger. A bank's assets are mostly loans: Maria's pizza loan, mortgages, business loans, bonds. Things the bank expects to collect money from in the future. Its liabilities are money it owes, deposits from customers, and money borrowed from investors. Equity is the bank's own money. It is the cushion that takes losses before depositors are hit. Here is the part that often gets skipped. Bank assets can fall because the money people owe the bank becomes less likely to be paid back. In 2008, the biggest example was mortgages. When house prices were rising, mortgages looked safe. If a borrower had trouble, a house could be sold and the bank would get its money back. So banks treated many mortgage assets as low risk. But when house prices fell, the collateral fell too. Suddenly a loan that looked safe could be worth much less. Borrowers defaulted, houses sold for less than expected, and the bank's assets dropped in value. Let's put real numbers on it. Picture the bank's assets as water in a tank. It owns $100 of assets, and it owes 97, that's the line it must stay above. The green gap on top is its equity, just $3. Now watch a 5% loss. The asset level drops from 100 toward 95, but the bank still owes 97. The water falls below the owed line. The bank is now underwater. Equity didn't just hit zero, it turned negative, minus $2. The bank owes more than it owns. The cushion is gone, it is insolvent, exactly what happened to real banks in 2008. The reason small losses became deadly is leverage. Leverage just means using borrowed money to own something larger than your own money could buy. In the house example, you use $20,000 of your own money to buy a $200,000 house. That is 10-to-1 leverage, 1 part your money, 9 parts borrowed money. If the house falls 10%, the whole equity slice is wiped out. You still owe the mortgage, but the value protecting you has disappeared. Before the crisis, some major banks were closer to 30-to-1. For every $1 of their own money, they had about $30 of assets. The math is simple. 1 divided by 30 equals 3.3%. That was the whole safety margin. A loss bigger than that could wipe the bank out. So regulators had a problem. Banks were important to everyday life, but they had been allowed to run with cushions that were too thin. The solution came from Basel, Switzerland. Basel I, agreed in 1988, was the first simple rulebook: classify assets by risk, then hold capital against them. It was a huge step, but it was blunt. Basel II, agreed in 2004, tried to be smarter. It let big banks use more advanced internal models. But in the crisis, some of those models made risky balance sheets look safer than they were. Basel III, agreed after the crisis, was the correction. More capital. Better capital. Limits on leverage. And new liquidity rules so banks could survive a panic, not just look safe on paper. In Part 2, we turn those ideas into the actual Basel III rules: the capital ratio, risk-weighted assets, the leverage backstop, and the liquidity test. The names sound intimidating. The examples are not.